There was a man I knew, a retired mechanical engineer, 76 years old. His wife had passed 3 years earlier. He had a healthy pension, a paid-off home, and just over $400,000 in retirement accounts. And every winter, he kept his thermostat at 62 degrees. Not because he couldn't afford heat, because turning it higher felt like losing something. When his daughter offered to fly him out for his granddaughter's ballet recital, $500 round trip, he said no. I can't justify that, sweetheart. His granddaughter was 7. She won't be 7 again. Today we're talking about seniors who have money but cannot bring themselves to spend it. Not because they're poor, because saving became the only identity they have left. This isn't about reckless spending. It's about people who built a comfortable retirement and then refused to live in it. There are things you can do about it. 5 of them. And the first one might be the most important. Stop spending on things. Start spending on presents. The engineer I just told you about, after years of saying no to everything, finally changed. Not because someone showed him a spreadsheet, because he went to a funeral. His neighbor, a retired postal worker, died at 83. Not a wealthy man. But 40 people filled the chapel. Neighbors, grandchildren, a waitress from a diner 2 blocks away, a sister who flew in from across the country. They told stories, they laughed, they cried, not out of obligation, because they actually knew him. They knew him because he had shown up. He had spent his time and his modest money being present. Every Tuesday, this man went to that diner. Full breakfast. He tipped $3 every time. The waitress knew his name. Every spring, he flew to visit his sister. $240 round trip. They sat on her patio and laughed about things that happened 50 years ago. Every Christmas, he gave each grandchild $50 in a handwritten card. Buy something that makes you smile. That waitress put a photo of him on the wall behind the register. The engineer went home after the funeral, sat in his cold living room, and realized he had been saving for a life he was no longer living. The next month, he bought a plane ticket, flew to see his granddaughter's recital. $512. He said it was the best money he ever spent, not because the performance was extraordinary. She was 7. She forgot 2 steps and waved at him from the stage because he was there. There's research behind why that matters. Professor Thomas Gilovich at Cornell University found that money spent on experiences, meals with people you care about, trips, classes, produces significantly more lasting happiness than money spent on material things. And the gap grows over time. The joy from a new television fades within weeks. The memory of a trip with your sister compounds. Every time you remember it, you feel it again. Experiences become part of your identity. A product belongs to the market. Someone will always have a bigger one. When you spend money on being present with someone, your hippocampus encodes that moment differently. It tags it with emotion, with sensory detail, with faces. That is why you can forget what you bought last month, but remember a meal with your father from 20 years ago. $512. That was the price of the flight. But what he actually lost was the last time his granddaughter would perform that particular dance, at that particular age, looking for his face in the audience. Gilovich's team tested this across income levels, age groups, and cultures. The result held every time. People who spent on experiences reported higher satisfaction not just immediately, but months and years later. People who spent on objects reported a spike, then a return to baseline, every time. The second thing, set a floor, not just a ceiling. Most financial advice for retirees is about limits. Don't exceed 4%. Don't touch the principal. Don't overspend. The engineer had heard all of that for years. What nobody ever told him was to set a minimum. Here's why that matters. The Center for Retirement Research at Boston College tracked retirees over nearly 2 decades. They found that many pass away with roughly 80% of their pre-retirement savings still intact. 80%. These are people who spent 40 years saving for a future they then refuse to live. The Wall Street Journal reported that the average retiree withdraws only 2.1% of their savings per year. Financial planners recommend 4% as safe. Most people spend half of what they are told is safe to spend. They have the money, they have the permission, they still cannot do it. Alliance Life ran a survey in 2023. 61% of retirees said their number one fear was running out of money. Not dying, not illness, running out of money, even when the math showed they had enough for 30 years. So, what would it look like to set a floor? A minimum amount you spend each month not on bills, not on medicine, but on life. $200. That is the number one financial therapist suggested. $200 a month on something that is not necessary, but is meaningful. A meal out, a visit, a gift, a cab ride instead of a bus. It sounds small, but for someone who has not spent on themselves in years, it is a revolution. A geriatric specialist who treated over 6,000 elderly patients put it this way: money you can spend but choose not to is not savings. It's fear disguised as discipline. There was a man in a diner in Ohio, 81 years old. He came every Tuesday morning, ordered the full breakfast, left a $3 tip on a $6 meal. The waitress said he once told her this was the only meal all week he did not cook himself. He said it made him feel like a person again. The third thing: stop saving for your children's inheritance. Start investing in their memory of you. This is the hardest one. The engineer had been hoarding money partly for himself, but partly, if he was honest, for his kids. He thought that was love. But his daughter told him something at the recital that broke him open. She said, "Dad, I don't need your money. I need you to stop being afraid to live. When you say no to everything, it feels like you've already given up. And that scares me more than any bill ever could." Carl Pillemer at Cornell University surveyed over 1,300 adults and found that 27% of Americans are estranged from at least one family member. 27%. And the most common reason was not abuse. It was not addiction. It was neglect of the relationship. People who stopped showing up. People who chose money over presence or silence over effort. One person wrote something online I haven't forgotten. "My parents planned a nice vacation for us, then almost canceled when they had to commit to the cost. I told them if they needed the money, we'd just hang out at home. But if they were planning to leave it to us, all we'd do is go on a nice vacation and talk about how much we wish mom and dad had been there to enjoy it." A woman posted about her 85-year-old mother-in-law, a millionaire, had COPD, part of a lung removed, needed oxygen. In the middle of summer, with heat making her breathing worse every night, she refused to buy a window air conditioner. $150. She had long-term care insurance. She would probably never need to dip into savings for anything, and she still wouldn't spend $150 to breathe comfortably at night. Her 3 children will split the money after she's gone. They'd rather have a mother who could breathe. If your children are self-sufficient, the greatest inheritance you can leave them is not a bank balance. It's the memory of a parent who lived, who showed up, who ordered the real meal, who turned up the heat, who said yes. A dinner table set for 4, one person eating, 3 plates untouched. That is not a metaphor. That is a Tuesday night in a lot of homes. The fourth thing: reduce what you carry around. This one isn't about money, it's about weight. Many people past 70 are still carrying things that don't belong to them anymore. Old grudges, old shame, Old obligations they took on 30 years ago and never put down. They stay up at night replaying a mistake from 1994. They feel guilty about a decision they made when their kids were small. They hold on to anger towards someone who may not even remember the argument. That weight doesn't cost money, but it costs everything else. Psychologists call it rumination, the habit of replaying past failures on a loop. Research consistently shows that chronic rumination is one of the strongest predictors of depression in older adults. The more you replay the past, the less room your brain has for the present. And the present is the only place where anything good can happen. A retired doctor I once knew said something that stayed with me. He said, "After 70, your job is to get lighter, not thinner, lighter. Drop the fights you're never going to win. Drop the guilt about things you can't undo. Drop the need to be right about something that happened before your grandchildren were born. Every year, your body carries less. Your mind should too." He practiced it literally. Once a year on his birthday, he would sit with a piece of paper and write down 3 things he was still angry or ashamed about. Then he'd fold the paper and throw it away. He said most years he wrote the same things, but every year they felt a little smaller. You don't have to forgive perfectly. You don't have to forget. You just have to stop carrying it in your front pocket where you reach for it every day. One psychologist gave her patients a simple exercise. Write down the thing you are carrying, 1 sentence, then ask yourself, can I change this? If yes, write the action. If no, fold the paper and throw it away, not as a metaphor. Physically throw it away. She said the patients who did this consistently for 4 weeks reported a significant drop in recurring negative thoughts. Not because the paper mattered, because the act of releasing mattered. A man sitting at his desk at 2 in the morning, a blank piece of paper, a pen, not writing a letter to anyone, writing a letter to the version of himself that still carries something that happened in 1987. The 5th thing, practice 1 small yes every week. This comes from a geriatric specialist who spent decades working with patients trapped in what he called frugality addiction. His recommendation was this: once a week, say yes to 1 thing you would normally deny yourself. The brain does not decay because of age. It decays because of repetition. When every day is the same food, same route, same silence, the neural pathways stop forming. The brain interprets sameness as a signal to shut down. But when you introduce something small, a new taste, a new place, a new conversation, the prefrontal cortex reactivates. Dopamine flows again, not because the experience is big, because it is different. The brain does not need a vacation, it needs a break from repetition. So he recommended a practice. Once a week, say yes to 1 thing you would normally refuse. It does not have to cost money, but it can. A fresh loaf from a bakery instead of store-brand sliced bread. A taxi on a rainy day instead of waiting for the bus. A movie at the theater. A book you've been wanting. A coffee that isn't instant. The point isn't the item. The point is the neurological act of choosing comfort without guilt. Over time, this rebuilds the brain's reward pathways that decades of extreme saving have suppressed. You're not wasting money. You're retraining yourself to believe you deserve comfort now, not someday. A man on a retirement forum described his own version of this. He said he set a threshold, $200, below which he simply stopped worrying. No more chasing cheap gas prices. No more clipping coupons unless he felt like it. He said, once you start to loosen the purse strings and see that the money is still there and growing, you get more comfortable with it. The engineer started with coffee, real coffee, not instant. Every Wednesday morning, he walks to a cafe 3 blocks from his house and orders a medium drip with cream, $3.25. He sits by the window. He reads the paper. Sometimes he talks to the person behind the counter. He told me once, "That coffee is the best part of my week. and it costs less than a gallon of gas. Those are the 5 changes, and if that's all you take from today, that's enough. But there's something else I want to talk about before we finish, something that most people who struggle with spending never see, because they can't. It's behind them. It's the view from the other side of the table. I want to talk about what your family sees when you won't spend. There was a woman, mid-40s, married, 2 kids, who wrote about her father-in-law online. He was 85, owned his home, had more than enough money for the rest of his life, and he refused to hire anyone to maintain his house, his yard, or his car. He said it was about independence. She said it was about control. So every weekend, her husband drove 40 minutes to mow his father's lawn, fix a leaking faucet, patch a piece of siding, replace a light bulb in a fixture too high for an 85-year-old to reach. A gardener would cost $60 a week. A handyman, maybe $100 for a visit, but his father wouldn't hear of it. "I don't need to waste money on that," she wrote. Independence is just another word for stingy. He prides himself on not hiring anyone, but what he's really doing is hiring us for free and calling it family. That woman was not angry about money. She was exhausted, and she was watching her husband burn out trying to serve a man who had the resources to take care of himself but refused to use them. This is the part that frugal seniors almost never understand. When you won't spend money on yourself, the cost doesn't disappear. It transfers. It transfers to your children, not in dollars, in time, in energy, in worry, in guilt. A man on a forum described trying for years to convince his retired parents to spend more. They grew up poor. They made it to upper middle class through decades of discipline. In retirement, their monthly spending was still less than their pension, meaning their savings were literally growing while they lived like they had nothing. He showed them the math. He explained the safety margin. It didn't work. His edit, after hundreds of responses, said this: "I guess the general consensus is if they feel comfortable with what they're spending, it's none of my business." But then another person responded and said something sharper. "My mom could have sought more aggressive cancer treatment, but she didn't want to spend the money. She died at 61. I'm not that frugal, but you see where I come from. Didn't want to spend the money on cancer treatment and died." That's what the family sees. They see a parent choosing a number on a screen over their own life, and they can't do anything about it, because every time they try, the parent says, "I'm fine, I don't need it, stop wasting money." A daughter visiting her parents described opening their refrigerator and finding spoiled vegetables, stale crackers, and spice jars from 1996. She would come every visit and quietly throw away the expired food while her mother wasn't looking. She drove her mother to a discount grocery outlet, not because it was the closest store, but because her mother refused to shop anywhere else, even though a full-service market sat across the street. "This is my parents' world," she wrote, even though they'd be considered well-to-do by anyone's standard. While her father was dying, she drove her mother to the hospital every day in their one car. The defogger didn't work. The tires were bald. The roof leaked when it rained. Her father had refused to repair anything. A new set of tires would have cost $300. A roof patch, maybe $100. She described the feeling of driving her elderly mother through rain with a leaking roof, on bald tires, to visit a dying man, knowing there was money in the bank to fix every one of those things 10 times over. That's the view from the other side of the table, and most seniors who refuse to spend will never see it, because their children love them too much to say it out loud. So they drive the leaking car. They mow the lawn every Saturday. They throw away the expired food in secret, and they carry a quiet, heavy resentment that they feel guilty for even having. Because how do you resent someone for being careful? You don't resent them for being careful. You resent them for choosing fear over the people standing right in front of them. A writer who works with aging families put it perfectly. She said, "Cheap is not a budget strategy. Cheap is an illness. Cheap hurts. It insults. It wastes time. It steals, robbing happiness." And then she added something that I think captures the whole tragedy. "I am a bird who was raised by squirrels." If you're listening to this and you recognize yourself, not as the bird, but as the squirrel, I want you to hear what your children won't say. They don't want your money. They want you to stop suffering in a house you could easily make comfortable. They want to stop worrying about you every time the weather gets hot or the roads get icy. They want to visit you and see fresh food in the refrigerator. They want you to say yes when they invite you to dinner and not hear you complain about the prices on the menu. They want to stop lying to you about where the new air conditioner came from because you'd refuse it if you knew they bought it. They want to stop carrying your fear for you. And here's something most people don't think about until it's too late. The things you can buy today, you may not be able to buy tomorrow, not because you'll run out of money, because you'll run out of capacity. There is a window, and it is not as wide as you think, where your body, your mind, and your money all overlap, where you're healthy enough to travel, sharp enough to plan, mobile enough to walk into a restaurant and enjoy a meal, where you can hold your grandchild and fly to see a recital and sit on your sister's patio and taste real food and feel the sun. That window does not stay open forever. A retired doctor I knew said something I've repeated many times since. He said, "Every age you reach is an age you've never been before. 62 is new, 71 is new, 84 is new. You've never done this before, so stop pretending you know how much time is left." He was right. Nobody knows. But what we do know, from decades of research, from thousands of cases, from the 80-year Harvard study and the Boston College data and the Allianz surveys and the AARP numbers, is that most people don't overspend in retirement. They underspend, and they regret it. 70% of them regret it. The money will outlast you. That is almost certain. The question is whether you will outlast your own willingness to live. A man on a retirement forum described watching his father refuse to buy a convertible, a small, used, affordable one, year after year after year. Every year, the son encouraged him. Every year, the father said maybe next time. The father died with $200,000 in the bank. The son wrote, "I encouraged my dad to get another convertible. Nope, didn't happen." He didn't write anything else. He didn't need to. You can hear everything in that silence. If anything I've said today sounds like you, or like someone you love, I want you to try one thing this week. Look at your bank account. Whatever the number is, ask yourself, when was the last time that number made me happy? Not safe, not proud, happy. If you can't remember, then the number isn't serving you. It's holding you. Pick one thing you've said no to in the past month. A meal, a visit, a small comfort. And say yes. Don't think about the cost. Pay attention to how it feels. Your savings are not a monument. They're a tool. And tools are meant to be used before they rust and before you do. You're hearing this at exactly the right time. Not because you're young, because you're still here. You can still order the breakfast. You can still book the flight. You can still show up to the recital. You can still fix the car. You can still turn up the heat. You can still buy the air conditioner. You can still say yes. Don't make your children birds who never saw you fly. If this meant something to you, share it with someone who needs to hear it. And if you're willing, leave a comment. Just tell me, what's one thing you've been saying no to? Thank you for your time, and please go spend some of it on something that matters. Your savings are a road. You built it. Drive on it.